Good afternoon, everyone. Subcommittee will come to order, and I welcome the witness and subcommittee members to today's hearing and the other members of the subcommittee. I'm standing in for Chairman Van Orden as he's dealing with a personal family issue today, and look forward to giving him a report of how today's committee went. As he has said many times, and all of you have heard, we operate this subcommittee and the VA committee in whole with the ultimate goal of improving opportunities for those who've served our country and doing that in a nonpartisan fashion in a collaborative way. And I'm excited to work with the minority today and how we can move the agenda forward in that effort. In this legislative hearing, we'll continue in that spirit of bipartisanship. We hold legislative hearings to learn from VA and other stakeholders about their views on the bills that we are proposing and to ensure members are making informed decisions when we do or do not mark them up later in the process. We value this insight provided by these folks with the witness testimony that we have before us today. Unfortunately, though, the committee did not receive the VA or Department of Labor testimony until less than 24 hours before this hearing started. And, you know, to me, we want to work collaboratively with these agencies in a way that ultimately achieves the best benefit for our veterans. And it's really my expectation and that of Chairman Van Orden to make sure that we can do that effectively. And it's my hope and really my request from you today that you can furnish that, that legislative testimony to us ahead of time so that we can have a deeper and better insight into it ahead of time. It's my hope that it's the last time that we receive late testimony in order to ensure that we are providing the best economic opportunities and support for our veterans. We have 12 important legislative proposals to consider here today. It's important to note that not all of the proposals we discuss will move forward in the legislative process, but it's important to have them take testimony on these bills. A number of these bills seek to improve education programs, accessibility to VA benefits, and VA's home loan program. I specifically want to highlight my own bill on the agenda. My bill, H.R. 7083, the CRUISE Act, would require the VA to develop a plan and centralize all payment for adaptive automobile equipment program, the AAE program. This would help eliminate the bureaucratic barriers of each individual hospital making their own payments directly to the AAE dealers and instead move it to a central VA office. By doing so, this bill would streamline the process of paying these providers with the intent of ensuring that the providers get paid sooner and more efficiently. We've heard of instances where there are delays in the hundreds of days in paying these providers. There have been continued payment delays from VA, and in certain parts of the country, there are 22 adaptive automotive invoices that are over 1,000 days late for their payments. That's years in backlog. That's unacceptable, and my bill would get to work at addressing these delays, cutting out the red tape and ensuring providers get paid for their valuable work, all the while getting disabled veterans the service that they deserve. My bill would also hold VA accountable for making these payments to AAE providers in a timely manner by requiring the VA to publish the exact number of days that each payment takes that exceeds 30 days. If we don't fix this, we risk losing good providers who help our veterans get the adaptive vehicles that they need. Many of these are, of course, beyond the reach of veterans otherwise if we don't have the VA step up and do this. And these are benefits that they've earned due to injuries they've sustained while serving our country. We can't let the bureaucracy get in the way of providing these benefits. If this continues, veterans will have less provider options available to them because they won't see the VA as a good faith partner in that effort. Additional bills that we will consider would address modernizations and improvements to workforce, the TAP program, the VA home loan program, and the GI Bill. I have reservations about some of the proposals on the agenda today, and the witness testimony and questions from members will hopefully address some of these issues so we can make informed decisions about whether to move these bills forward in the legislative process. And I come to them with an open mind. Just because we have bills on the legislative hearing does not necessarily guarantee that we can advance them through the markup process due to policy or cost concerns or other things that may arise through testimony today. We look forward to hearing from the members who have introduced these proposals as well as our witnesses on how we can continue to improve these bills and better the lives of our veterans. And with that, I will yield to the ranking member for his testimony and opening remarks.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll get right to the point. I know our time's limited here today. First off, I would just like to express disappointment that we don't have a witness from the Department of Defense joining us here today to understand the legislation before us. But on the other hand, I'm glad to welcome someone from the Department of Labor. I'm glad that we have Veteran Employment Training Services Assistant Secretary confirmed, and I want to welcome you, Mr. Workman, to the subcommittee, and thank you for being here. I know we're going to have members joining from off the committee today to help us understand their legislation and work together on bipartisan solutions that will help our nation's veterans, and I'm really glad to see that. I want to highlight a few of these bills. One is Mr. Riley's bill to address issues that we saw during the recent government shutdown around expiring authorizations in the VA's housing and security programs. The chairman and I have spoken many times on the realities of affordable housing in our districts and across the country. We have also highlighted addressing homelessness as among the top priorities for the subcommittee, and here's an opportunity to do just that. I'll also note that Ms. McLean Delaney's bill on improvements to the Servicemember Civil Relief Act, Mr. Mannion's bill prohibiting the withholding of student veterans' transcripts, and Mr. Whiteside's bill to improve reporting from the VA Home Loan Program are all expected to be cost neutral. So I hope to see them move through the subcommittee and to the full committee markup quickly. As for other legislation before the committee today, I hope that the chairman will work with our staff to make improvements to bills that move forward to a future markup. While I think that the authors are all well-intentioned, the proposed changes to the Transition Assistance Program, as well as modifications to grant employment and apprenticeship programs, may require some larger structural changes to achieve the desired effects and prevent unintended consequences. I support the intent of the Vet Tech program, now known as the High Technology Program, and it's critical that we first address the under 50% employment rate for graduates of the program before we add anything to it. We can't keep throwing taxpayer dollars at well-intentioned but underperforming programs. Speaking specifically to the Cruise Act, I think it's unfortunate how late the VA's testimony was submitted, and I don't believe that VA has a witness here that can directly speak to that problem. I understand that the status quo is untenable for the dealerships, and I have concerns that this bill fails to hit the mark, especially given that it doesn't provide additional staff or funding to help process the claims, which will only make delays worse. So I'm committed to getting a bipartisan solution in coordination with stakeholders, but I have concerns in terms of how the bill has been drafted. After today's hearing, as we move forward to the markups and subcommittee and full committee at both levels, I ask the chairman to continue working with us to find and focus on areas where we agree. This committee has a great tradition of bipartisan work, and we've got to reinforce it with action year in and year out. While the traditionally agreed upon ratio of majority to minority bills brought forward in legislative hearings for this Congress is still slightly out of balance, I trust that the chairman will remedy this in future hearings. So I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Ranking Member Pappas. I ask unanimous consent that Representative Valadeo from California, Representative Whitesides from California, Representative Keene from New Jersey, Representative Kiggins from Virginia, and Representative Nunn from Iowa be permitted to participate in today's subcommittee hearing. Without objection, that is so ordered. I recognize Representative Valadeo for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Barrett and Ranking Member Pappas and all members of the subcommittee for your time today. After serving our nation, veterans deserve timely access to quality care, especially when they're facing homelessness and mental health challenges. Too often, veterans slip through the cracks, not because help doesn't exist, but because the system isn't working the way it should. That's why I was proud to introduce the Improving Mental Health Care and Coordination for Homeless Veterans Act. This bill is about accountability, coordination, and making sure vulnerable veterans are connected with every VA service created to help them readjust to civilian life. A recent Inspector General report uncovered the serious gaps in how the VA documents, assessments, and shares critical information across the programs. When assessments aren't completed or recorded properly, veterans miss out on services, housing options, and critical follow-up care that could mean the difference between life and death, and this is unacceptable. My bill requires the VA to conduct a comprehensive assessment within 3 days of identifying a veteran in need, evaluate immediate and long-term health needs, identify appropriate housing options, and ensure the information is included in the veteran's electronic health records so nothing gets lost. Roughly 1 in 10 veterans experience homelessness after serving and seek help from the VA, and we owe it to them to ensure the system works properly. They can access the service and that they can access the services they need. This bill is a reasonable step to strengthen coordination and accountability, and I urge all members of the committee to support it. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Valadeo. Yields. Now recognize Representative Whitesides for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today in support of my legislation to strengthen transparency and oversight of the VA Home Loan Program. For generations, this program has been one of the most effective tools we have to help veterans achieve home ownership and stay housed during times of financial hardship. It's a promise we make to those who served that their sacrifice will be met with opportunity and stability when they return home. But a promise only works if the system behind it is healthy. In recent years, changing market conditions and policy shifts have raised real concerns among veterans, service organizations, housing experts, and lawmakers about the long-term stability of the VA home loan program. We've heard warnings about increased financial stress among veteran borrowers and questions about whether the program is equipped to withstand future economic shocks. Right now, Congress and the public do not have consistent, detailed data to fully understand how the program is performing. That makes it harder to spot problems early on and harder to act before veterans are put at risk. My bill is a straightforward, good governance solution. It requires the Department of Veterans Affairs to publish regular public reports on the health and performance of the VA home loan program. These reports would track how many loans are being issued, denied, and refinanced, and provide insight into staffing levels at the VA home loan office so we can ensure the program has the capacity it needs to serve veterans effectively. This is about making sure government systems designed to support veterans actually work. I firmly believe that good data leads to good policy. With better information, Congress can conduct stronger oversight, stakeholders can identify issues earlier, and the VA can respond more quickly when veterans begin to experience financial stress. Most importantly, this bill helps protect the long-term solvency of the program so that it remains available for future generations of veterans, not just those who served today. Preventing veteran housing insecurity should be a shared priority across the committee, as I know it is. Transparency is one of the most effective tools we have to do that. I'm grateful to Ranking Member Takano for his partnership and leadership on this issue, and I look forward to working with members on both sides of the aisle to ensure that this program remains strong, accountable, and worthy of the veterans it serves. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, gentleman. Yields. Representative Keene, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before the Veterans Affairs Committee today in support of the Veterans Flight Training Responsibility Act, a bill that I introduced with Congressman McGarvey. I come from a state of New Jersey, proud home to over 400,000 veterans, whether at Picatinny Arsenal in my district or at military bases throughout our state. America's armed forces serve faithfully throughout New Jersey and the world. Our veterans have given so much to serve our country, and so I am dedicated to ensuring that they receive the benefits that they deserve. Today, we have a chance to move forward a bill that will provide veterans with the flexibility to pursue education at their own pace. The Veterans Flight Training Responsibility Act expedites the flight training process for veterans by removing the 1-year requirement for accessing their GI Bill benefits. Flight training timelines often look different than traditional education programs. This means costs are accrued at a different rate. Our veterans' benefits should reflect this. The Veterans Flight Training Responsibility Act ensures veterans can complete their flight training on a timeline that makes sense for their program without having to pay costly, out-of-pocket tuition fees. I am proud to stand with our veterans to ensure that they receive their education benefits on a timeline that supports their chosen course of study. This bill honors our veterans by helping them launch successful aviation careers after serving in our nation's military. I thank this committee for their consideration of my bill, and I encourage my colleagues to support this important legislation. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you. I ask unanimous consent that Representative Mannion from New York be permitted to participate in today's subcommittee hearing without objection. So ordered. Representative Mannion, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today in support of my bill, the End Transcript Withholding for Veterans Act. And I'd also like to thank my colleague, Representative Moylan, for co-leading this effort with me. This common sense legislation would close the gap in federal law that has unfairly denied veterans access to the educational benefits that they've earned. For too long, colleges and universities have been permitted to withhold transcripts from students as a debt collection tactic. For many students, this puts a hold on their careers or prevents them from furthering their education. What's also troubling is that in many cases, these debts are the result of billing errors or disputed balances, and yet student veterans are left in limbo for no fault of their own. Student veterans often pursue their education in non-traditional ways, balancing academic responsibilities alongside raising families and building careers. If you don't have access to your academic records, it's much harder to secure employment and pay back the debts that triggered the withholding in the first place. In 2024, the Department of Education took an important step in addressing this issue by prohibiting colleges from withholding academic transcripts for coursework paid for with Title IV financial aid. However, Title IV aid is separate from the educational benefits provided under the post-9/11 GI Bill, and as a result, current law allows veterans to be excluded from these protections. My bill would correct this inequity and provide parity. No veteran who has served this country should face these unnecessary barriers to opportunity. In the district I represent, Syracuse, Central New York, and the Mohawk Valley, our institutions of higher education serve our military-connected students and veterans exceptionally well, and I'm proud to stand behind that mission. I thank the members of this subcommittee for considering my bill and for having me here today. I kindly ask for your support in passing this legislation and looking out for our student veterans. I yield back.
Thank you, gentlemen. Yields. Recognize Representative Kiggins for 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the Economic Opportunities Subcommittee for having me here today to discuss my bill, the Veterans Energy Transition Act, also known as the VET Act. I introduced this bill to help our nation's service members transition into meaningful, sustainable careers in the fast-growing energy sector. It's very simple. We know that we need more energy and energy producers, and our veterans need jobs, so it's a great marriage for sure. When service members transition out of the military, it can be challenging to find a mission-driven career beyond the service, and that can make this period difficult for them. My district is home to thousands of these transitioning veterans, as well as a booming energy sector. Virginia has an all-of-the-above energy approach, which we embrace and encourage veterans to be an important part of that. Energy companies continue to choose Virginia as their home base, and our nation's veterans are uniquely qualified for many of these jobs. While our national energy demand continues to steadily increase around the country, we must maintain a reliable workforce that secures our energy dominance on the world stage. The VET Act creates a hiring pathway for veterans through a grant program to assist separating members of the armed forces and their spouses in obtaining employment in the energy industry, an industry that's vital to our nation's future and economy. At its core, this legislation recognizes something many of us already know. When our service members complete their service to our nation, their dedication and skills don't end. They simply need a new pathway. The VET Act is a practical, targeted step towards helping those who have served our country find stable careers and contribute to our national energy goals. It bridges military experience with civilian opportunity, supports families, and strengthens our workforce. I urge thoughtful consideration and bipartisan support for this bill and its goal of honoring service with meaningful opportunity. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you. Representative Dunn, you're now recognized for 3 minutes.
I want to thank both the chair and the ranking member on the good bipartisan work we're all trying to do to help our veterans. I'm proud today to be joining and advocating for H.R. 2878, the Daniel J. Harvey and Adam Lambert Improving Service Members Transition to Reduce Veteran Suicide Act. The U.S. is leading on a new era of foreign policy, one where our sons and daughters are called to serve and defend our great nation, where we have invested in their safety, in their families, and in their economic well-being with one of the greatest pay raises ever. We also must invest on their health when they return from the battlefield. Last month, I joined my fellow Iowans, as well as President Trump, at Dover Air Force Base to receive the remains of 2 Iowa National Guardsmen who were killed defending this country in Syria. Staff Sergeant William Nathaniel Howard and Staff Sergeant Edgar Brian Torres Tovar, who is from my district. And while I attended their funerals, I also saw other warriors who came home and bore scars not seen to the human eye. It is never easy to lose a warrior on the field, but it is equally devastating to lose a warrior on the home front. I'm here today not just as a U.S. Congressman, but like many of you, as a veteran. 20 years of combat service, and as a commander, I watched my own airmen endure the struggles that come with post-service life. I carry the message of those who cannot be here to speak on their behalf today, because veteran suicide rates still rank as some of the highest reasons for veteran death. Specifically, I speak today in honor of Corporal Adam Lambert, a proud Marine from Adel, Iowa. He loved his family loved him. Adam put others before himself, his friends, family, and our country. Adam bravely served our country in the Marines. He deployed to Okinawa, and in Afghanistan. And during boot camp, Adam met a fellow Marine named Daniel Harvey. He was from Rhode Island. They became friends and they stayed connected throughout their entire career in the U.S. Marine Corps. But at just 22 years old, Daniel died by suicide. He had just left the Marines. Adam, his friend, followed him less than a month later. Adam was a friend. He was a beloved son, and he was a brother. Unfortunately, their stories are all too common for our service members when they come home from duty. To address this, I'm proud to be working with this committee as we introduce H.R. 2778. The Daniel J. Harvey and Adam Lambert Improving Service Members Transition to Reduce Veteran Suicide Act will work with our Transition Assistance Program to ensure transitioning vets are aware of both their mental health services that are available to them and help them provide access to the resources they deserve. With the help of this committee and advocates like all of you in this room, we can and should and will save others like Daniel and Adam. Thank you to all the witnesses who are here today, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this very important hearing. I yield.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. I now recognize Representative Hamadeh for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My bill, the Improving Emerging Tech Opportunities Veterans Act, isn't just another workforce bill. It's a national security imperative with Arizona's fingerprints all over it. Since 2020, America has seen over $600 billion in private semiconductor investment announced across 28 states. That means more than 500,000 American jobs. Artificial intelligence is a booming, emerging tech sector of the economy. But the problem is we don't have enough workers trained to fill them. But we do have enough veterans. In my own district, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, is investing hundreds of billions of dollars in the local economy, which will amount to thousands of jobs. And it is a critical piece of President Trump's mission to end our reliance on foreign chips, especially from adversaries like Communist China. In every meeting with TSMC, I've prioritized veterans, and they've assured me that they are in the process of creating a robust veteran program. But right now, the VA could do more to connect veterans with these opportunities, and private industry could move faster to implement the veteran hiring and training programs they have promised. My bill fixes that. It requires the VA to partner with industry leaders, educational institutions, and nonprofits to identify high-demand emerging tech jobs like semiconductor manufacturing and artificial intelligence. Then it mandates the VA put that information front and center during transition assistance and on the VA website. It also creates an expedited 90-day approval process for courses of education that train veterans for these positions, because we can't afford bureaucratic delays when national security and veteran opportunities are on the line. Now, I served as an Army intelligence officer. I know the discipline, the technical aptitude, and the mission focus our service members bring to every task. These men and women are exactly the type of people the semiconductor industry needs. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation. Our veterans deserve a path to high-paying, high-impact careers that also serve our national security interests. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Representative Hamadeh. I'll now introduce our witness panel. Our first witness, Mr. Kenneth Smith, Acting Executive Director, Education Services at the Department of Veteran Affairs. Mr. Smith is accompanied by Ms. Chantil Stovall, Acting Executive Director of Veteran Readiness and Employment Services within the Veteran Affairs Administration at the Department of Veteran Affairs. Our final witness is Mr. Jeremiah Workman, Assistant Secretary of Veterans Employment and Training Service at the Department of Labor. I ask the witnesses on our first panel, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. I ask the witness and members today to respect our 5-minute rule due to the votes that we have pending on the floor. Mr. Smith, you are now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony on behalf of the Department of VA.
Thank you. Chairman Barrett, Ranking Member Pappas, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to present our views on bills affecting VA's programs and benefits. Joining me today is Ms. Chantil Stovall, Acting Executive Director of Veteran Readiness and Employment Service. Before we begin, I'd like to apologize on behalf of VA for the delay in providing testimony due to the committee. VA continues to work on process improvements internally and externally to prevent future delays. Additionally, our VHA partners are not able to attend today's hearing, and unfortunately, I will be unable to speak on the Improving Mental Health Care and Coordination of Homeless Veterans Act and the elimination of maximum authorizations of appropriations for certain benefits for homeless veterans and making permanent the authority to carry out certain programs for homeless veterans. I will be taking those questions for the record. VA is happy to offer support for several bills. However, others, we support the bills but have concerns with the language as written. VA supports the intent of H.R. 982, Warriors to Workforce Act. However, we are still assessing the budgetary impacts of the bill. The bill would increase the amount of monthly housing allowance paid to individuals pursuing a full-time apprenticeship or on-the-job training under Chapter 33 from 80% to 90% during the second 6-month period of the program. This change will make OJT and apprenticeship programs more desirable for our beneficiaries. VA supports the intent with amendments of the Improving Emerging Tech Opportunities for Veterans Act, which would require VA to partner with critical stakeholders to identify specific types of industries and positions that, as a result of emerging technologies, are likely to have high employment and growth potential for individuals. We are especially supportive of the provision requiring collaboration with the Department of Labor, as VA already collaborates with DOL and believes this existing partnership can be leveraged to meet the bill's objectives. VA could not offer its support for a few of the bills. For instance, VA opposes H.R. 5634, the Veterans Flight Training Responsibility Act of 2025, as this bill would establish a $100,000 maximum total amount payable under Chapter 33 for flight training fees for individuals pursuing flight training programs offered by a public institution of higher learning. VA supports expanding flight training opportunities at flight schools for veterans and their dependents, but this bill does the opposite by placing an arbitrary limit on amounts payable. VA cites concerns with the Affordable Housing Guarantee Act to increase maximum home loan guarantee amount because VA has no evidence that there is a market need for such a change. VA agrees to work with Congress to make housing more affordable, but has concerns with unintended risks to taxpayers, veterans, and VA through an increase in the guarantee amount. VA also cites concerns with the Home Loan Quarterly Reports Bill and commits to provide additional information to Congress and the public without statutory requirement. Finally, for other bills, we must defer to other organizations as they fall outside VA's purview. We support all efforts to eliminate veteran suicide as intended by H.R. 2878, the Daniel J. Harvey and Adam Lambert Improving Servicemember Transition to Reduce Veteran Suicide Act, but must defer to the Department of War on matters involving pre-separation counseling. VA specifically addresses mental health to include PTSD and suicide prevention in its mandatory TAP module on VA benefits and services and in military life cycle modules. VA will work with the committee on language to strengthen those services. VA also defers H.R. 3159, Improving SCRA Benefit Utilization Act, to the Department of War. Last, we defer to the Department of Education, H.R. 5436, which prohibits an educational institution from withholding the transcript of an individual who attended a course or program using post-9/11 GI Bill benefits solely because the individual owes a debt to the institution. This concludes my statement. We'd be happy to answer any questions you or the members of the subcommittee may have.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. The written statement of Mr. Smith will be entered into the hearing record. Mr. Workman, you're now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony on behalf of the Department of Labor.
Thank you. Chairman Barrett, Ranking Member Pappas, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify at today's legislative hearing. The mission of the Department of Labor, Veterans Employment and Training Service is to prepare America's service members, veterans, and military spouses for meaningful careers, provide them with employment resources and expertise, protect their employment rights, and promote their employment opportunities. As a retired Staff Sergeant of the United States Marine Corps, a combat veteran, Navy Cross recipient, and a tireless advocate for veterans, I am honored and humbled to serve as Assistant Secretary of Veterans Employment and Training Service. While I've only been in my agency for less than a month, I'm impressed by its dedication to our mission. President Donald Trump has demonstrated his unrelenting support for our military, veterans, and military spouses, placing a renewed national focus on honoring their service and expanding their opportunities after they leave the uniform behind. We owe our eternal thanks to those who have served our country. That is why I'm thankful for the opportunity to work with Congress to continuously improve our programs. The Warriors to Workforce Act would increase GI Bill monthly housing allowance benefits for apprenticeships and on-the-job training programs, which are administered by the Department of Veterans Affairs. The Department of Labor supports this bill. Registered apprenticeships are a highly effective pathway to develop in-demand skills while also earning a paycheck from day one. Registered apprenticeships train workers for careers using a structured combination of paid on-the-job training and related instruction. In April of 2025, President Trump signed an executive order on preparing Americans for high-paying skilled trade jobs of the future, which established that it is the policy of the United States to optimize and target federal investments in workforce development to align with our country's reindustrialization needs and equip American workers to fill the growing demand for skilled trades and other occupations. In the executive order, the President set the goal of at least 1 million new active apprentices nationwide. This goal is closely aligned with current labor market demand. Skilled trade jobs are facing a significant labor shortage, leading to increased demand for qualified workers. In alignment with the President's priorities and the growing demand for highly skilled trade jobs, it is my hope that we can continue to expand veteran participation in registered apprenticeship programs. Separately, a draft bill would, among other provisions, eliminate the maximum authorizations of appropriations for the Department of Labor administered Homeless Veterans Reintegration Program. The Department of Labor supports this bill if amended. The Homeless Veterans Reintegration Program is the only federal grant to focus exclusively on competitive employment for veterans experiencing or at risk of homelessness, so that they can reach their full employment potential and high-quality career outcomes. The program fosters self-sufficiency through employment and also holds grantees to high standards of accountability and effectiveness with proven results. The department strongly supports this program and shares Congress's commitment to improving outcomes for veterans experiencing homelessness. However, we do have some budget concerns, which are detailed in my written testimony. Finally, the Veterans Energy Transition Act would establish a new $60 million per year grant program administered by the Department of Labor to assist members of the armed forces who are transitioning to civilian employment, veterans and their spouses to obtain employment in the energy industry. We have concerns with how the program is structured, as detailed in my written testimony. We look forward to working with the committee on alternative approaches that advance our shared goal of helping transitioning service members, veterans, and military spouses connect to jobs in the energy sector. Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, distinguished members of the subcommittee, this concludes my statement. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this hearing, and I welcome your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Workman. The written statement of Mr. Workman will be entered into the hearing record. And we'll now proceed to questioning. I ask members and witnesses again to respect the 5-minute rule as we have votes on the floor coming up. I recognize myself for 5 minutes. Mr. Smith, beginning with you. Obviously, you can surmise I've taken a bit of an interest in my bill about centralizing payments for these adaptive equipment vehicles. Can you tell me, in your own estimation, what is the appropriate amount of time that should be allowed for a vendor to receive payment under this program?
Thank you for the question. And I would like to say, first off, I'm not sure one of our concerns is whether this applies to the auto grant, which is a new purchase of a new vehicle, a one-time grant for $27,000, or whether it is the continuous benefit and eligibility for modifying an existing vehicle for adaptive equipment. I do agree that Prompt Payment Act requirements for 30 days is reasonable from the time that we know that there is eligibility to issue payment. And I do understand that we are working hard on that auto and adaptive equipment side. On the automobile grant, so the one-time grant, there could be a potential eligibility cycle involving a disability claims decision if the veteran has not already been adjudicated eligible based on loss or loss of use of extremities or central visual acuity.
And so I appreciate some of the detail there, but 30 days prompt payment requirement is the standard that we're going for, that we're trying to achieve. And I think you would agree with me that we've fallen short of that expectation. And we have instances, we have one provider with over 9 million in overdue payments that haven't come through. We've recently heard that some providers are withholding adaptive automobiles. They're literally withdrawing from the program because they don't have confidence that they're going to get timely payment from the VA. You heard in my opening remarks that we've heard of instances literally, more than 2 years in arrears for a particular provider. Now, I will fully grant that there's going to be truly exceptional circumstances where maybe a claim was filed and it hasn't been adjudicated or it's under appeal, and there are going to be instances of that happening, but not in the numbers that we are seeing from these providers. And my severe concern with that is that we are going to enter a situation where veterans aren't able to find a provider that will do this work because they don't see the VA as a good partner in that. And if the end result is that fewer veterans are able to access adaptive equipment, then we aren't making good on the effort we have in our country and through the work that you do in the VA to make sure that they are made whole to the extent that we can for the sacrifices they've made. I mean, these are people that have substantial injury that they've sustained to even qualify for this benefit to begin with. I know that we have payments that are more than 200 days late, 42 claims we're aware of that are over 500 days late. That's well over a year in time. The length of time for providers to receive payment seems excessively long and seems to be a chronic issue, especially considering that they must front the costs when supplying these vehicles to veterans. So they're not only out the money, but they're also out the equipment that they could have sold to another customer if they had them still available. So assuming we can work through some of your concerns, and I'd like to get a little bit more color to the I know you gave some, asked for some consideration of amendments. I'd be curious to know kind of what you would like those to be and how we can work together to get there. But to me, we've got different VA facilities remitting payment at vastly different times, and it can't just be a situation where there's a unique circumstance. That wouldn't be the case in the chronically overdue payments in certain areas. So if you can walk us through some of what your considerations of amendments are, we'd love to take them under advisement from you.
Thank you. I won't try to give you everything and would certainly like to enlist support from my compensation colleagues for policies and procedures. I can say that I did look to see how many pending auto allowance grants are sitting with our team right now, and it's approximately 195. Now, this is just that decision for an initial automobile one-time grant that's equal to $27,074.99. Our average days to complete last month was 75 days. Now, there are going to be outliers. That's an average. We recognize that and would certainly work to make that better. But that's also in a bucket of work that is assigned to our benefits eligibility support teams who are working right now through an inventory of about 900,000 adjustments to dependency and other miscellaneous adjustments, such as drill pay adjustments and other things. So there's a good bit of work. Specifically, if we would pull this out for specific prioritization, we would need resource identification for that specific assignment of work. And then we can certainly work to assign that work to that workforce to achieve the outcomes.
Okay, thank you, and look forward to working with you more on that. I would just further stipulate that 70-some days is more than twice the intended target of 30 days. But I appreciate some of that background. I recognize Ranking Member Pappas for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Smith, if I can start with you. I know we don't have a representative here specifically from the Homelessness Program Office today, but I just want to start with a question related to H.R. 7149. That's the Veteran Housing Promise Act. I saw that VA's legislative proposals for the fiscal year included making the Healthcare for Homeless Veterans program permanent. And I think we should all agree that the other housing insecurity programs like SSVF and Grant Per Diem are just as important as the healthcare for homeless veterans. So as noted in your written testimony, it's hard for providers in SSVF and GPD to plan with the funding and authorizations in the air every year. So should Congress permanently authorize those programs like the proposal for the healthcare for homeless veterans?
Thank you for the question. As I said in my opening, I'll have to take all of those questions for the record. However, I will add that VA certainly supports efforts to ensure veterans experiencing homelessness are properly assessed and cared for.
Well, thanks for taking that for the record. We look forward to the response. Also for you, Mr. Smith, in the written testimony, VA deferred to the Department of Education regarding H.R. 5436 and transcript withholding. So I wanted to ask you directly, should student veterans receive the same protections against schools withholding transcripts as their peers receiving Title IV funds through the Department of Education as proposed in Mr. Mannion's bill?
We are certainly interested in protections for our GI Bill veteran students, but we have to defer to the Department of Education because transcript provisioning is in their purview.
So VA won't provide any additional comment on that?
No, sir.
Okay. I want to move to another bill, H.R. 2878. I saw that you didn't address the department's stance on tasking the Solid Start program with assisting eligible veterans in enrolling with VHA, and I could see that being a difficult process over the phone. So would it make more sense just to automate the process and enroll all eligible service members during their transition process as outlined in the eVest Act? That way we're not playing catch up, but it's systematized and streamlined.
Thank you for the question. My understanding that in the TAPS benefits module, there is an interactive discussion with service members, and they're offered the opportunity to complete that 1010EZ form. If they defer, they're provided information for a liaison to assist them at a later time.
Well, thanks for that. I mean, making things as easy as possible for the end user, for the veteran, for the transitioning service member should be everyone's goal. In written testimony, the discussion draft regarding the VA home loan program reporting requirements, which is now H.R. 7150, I'm just having a hard time sympathizing with the idea that the reporting would be too burdensome in that case. I compare the proposed requirements to other government home loan programs, and this proposal is nowhere near as detailed or as burdensome. VA has all that data already. It would just be to publish it quarterly rather than annually. So am I missing something here? Is there a reason that the department feels differently about this as opposed to other reporting requirements?
We believe that we can provide that information to Congress without a statutory requirement and look forward to working with you on the definitions and the specific data points that you'd like to see. As you mentioned, we already publish a lot of data annually. In addition, we provide quarterly reporting on lender data under PL 115-174 and note that the Federal Financial Institution Examination Council publishes data and reports on institutions under the Home and Mortgage Disclosure Act.
Well, thanks for that. I know there are a number of data reporting requirements for schools, for the Home Loan Program Office. We ask for a significant amount of data from lenders, and they often complain about the amount of requirements, but they comply, and I think that we're not asking for too much here. Maybe I could just ask you one more question. This is around adding the emerging technology to the high technology vet tech program. And the current statute defines high technology as computer programming, computer software, media application, data processing, information sciences. So is there anything in the current statute that would prevent artificial intelligence or semiconductor programs from participating in the high technology program? Is this just to give it extra emphasis, or is there any sort of change that this would actually allow new programs in?
My understanding is that artificial intelligence would be covered as a software product under the existing authority. However, the addition of semiconductor manufacturing would be an addition that would be new as authorized by this act.
Okay, appreciate the responses. Thanks for being here, and I yield back.
Thank you. The ranking member yields. Representative Hamady, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Smith, thank you for being here today, and thank you for the VA's support of my bill, the Improving Emerging Tech Opportunities for Veterans Act. I appreciate the department's commitment to getting this right and look forward to working with you. In your testimony, you note that the VA already collaborates with the Department of Labor on identifying high and demand occupations. Can you walk the subcommittee through step by step how this bill would strengthen and formalize that partnership?
I would like to say that we would continue to leverage our meetings with the Department of Labor to discuss industry-specific needs and then provide targeted outreach for use of GI Bill benefits programs. Under the Vet Tech program, we would then also partner with the Department of Labor to ensure that we are reaching to providers of this training and ensure that they apply for and can begin training those students or veterans under that program.
When you say providers, you mean the industry leaders?
Industry leaders who would be offering certificates under the Vet Tech program, correct?
What relationship with there's already existing relationships right now with industry leaders in the VA, correct? But what would be a good model for this new bill?
I'm not sure, sir. I would have to get back to you on that.
Now, my bill establishes a 90-day expedited approval process for courses that train veterans for emerging tech jobs. Now, your testimony states the VA has no concerns with meeting that timeline. Is that right?
We understood that as 90 days to identify and then solicit for providers, and we do believe we could meet that with enough lead time to, if the enactment or effective date for the bill were a little bit in the future.
Right. We all know how important it is to make things move quickly, especially for our veterans who are looking for jobs. What type of message does this send to veterans and to industry leaders when the VA moves quickly to approve these high-demand jobs? Does that encourage more industries and businesses to want to partner with the VA?
I certainly hope so, yes.
Now, the Semiconductor Industry Association reports over 500,000 jobs tied to recent investments across 28 states, including Arizona. Now, from the VA's perspective, why are veterans uniquely positioned to fill this workforce need?
We believe that they have the right skills and the propensity to succeed given new tasks, and we would look forward to helping them achieve that target.
Yeah, as a veteran myself and talking to fellow veterans, we know that we're used to long hours. I think the biggest challenge has been these foreign companies moving into the United States. They work their people to death nearly over there. So they're not used to the work requirements here in the United States. And veterans, we know, it takes a lot of work, and they're dedicated, they're motivated, they're very disciplined. I think that's a huge benefit to the semiconductor and this AI industry that I know we're going to help out with. And so, Mr. Smith, I appreciate the VA's partnership on this, and together we can make sure our veterans are prioritized for these high-paying jobs and high-impact careers. Thank you for your time. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Amde. Representative McGarvey, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for having this hearing today. I hear from veterans all the time back home, people who are trying to build a stable life when they take off the uniform. This is trying to get a job. This is finish school. This is buy a home or simply even stay housed. And every single one of the bills we are discussing today touches one of those foundational pieces. So what I keep hearing from people, though, is keep it simple. Make the system work the way it's supposed to. Basically, veterans shouldn't have to fight all over again just to get a wheelchair accessible van. They shouldn't have to lose out on a job opportunity because the school won't release their transcript. They shouldn't be pushed into programs that sound good on paper but don't actually lead to real jobs. They shouldn't be fighting again for the things we promised to provide for them. So one thing we do on this committee, and I think we do it well despite everything you see in Washington right now, is we have a central mission, and that is to keep the promise we made to the men and women who put on a uniform willing to serve us and sacrifice everything for our safety and freedom. I'm happy to see that the legislation that we are talking about today are promoting programs that actually work, programs that keep that promise. So, Mr. Workman, I want to start with you. First of all, thank you for your service. Thank you for the heroism and bravery you showed. Because of your actions, a lot of people came home to their families, and we're grateful for that. We've heard concerns that Veterans Energy Transition, or VET, the VET Act, sets up another standalone jobs program instead of fixing and strengthening programs that already work, like SkillBridge. So how is DOL going to make sure that this doesn't turn into just one more confusing program that veterans have to navigate when they're transitioning out of the military?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. I would like to sit down with my counterparts at the DOD and also at the VA to ensure that we are doing the right thing by our veterans and by those that are leaving the military every year. As in my testimony that was submitted, there are some concerns from the Department of Labor with this bill, and I would look forward to working with your office to try to find a way forward with this bill so we can get more veterans employed in gainful jobs where they can wake up in the morning, feel that sense of pride, and feel good about taking care of their families.
Thank you. No, we look forward to working with you on that. And look, in this committee, sometimes we might not always agree about the way to get there. I don't think we disagree on the mission and the goal. So look forward to working with you on that. Because, again, this is just something, go to the VFW in Louisville and talk to people. Just walk around and talk to some of our veterans. They want a straight path to a good job, right? Not some more bureaucracy things they have to fight to do to get things that don't actually work. They don't want just another incentive for companies. So I know you're new at DOL, but while you're there, how can you guys make sure that this grant money from the VET Act actually leads to real training and credentials, long-term employment, instead of just giving out sort of hiring bonuses to businesses?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. Like I said in my submitted testimony, I think there are some issues with the bill that need to be addressed before we can find a way forward, but I definitely look forward to working with you and the rest of the members of this committee to find a way forward, because I agree our veterans deserve the best, and we need to do what we can to ensure that they are set up for success once they take the uniform off.
Yeah, appreciate that commitment and definitely want to work with you on it, because this is something, we don't want it to get lost. We want this to be just another hearing where there's again, reassurances or things said or things, we'll get back to it. Like, no, let's actually make sure these programs are working for our veterans. Mr. Smith, I'll switch to you about transcript withholding. There's a real risk that veterans in my district, in Louisville and places all over the country, could lose job offers because their school may not release their transcript over a disputed debt. So my first question to you is a simple yes or no. Do you agree that veterans who are using the GI Bill should never be blocked from getting their own academic record?
Unfortunately, I have to defer to the Department of Education on that. It's their policy.
Okay. Well, I can go ahead and state my opinion on that we should never have a veteran blocked from getting their own academic record, particularly when they are on the GI Bill. Again, a benefit not given to them, a benefit they earned through their service, and would love your help in making sure we can get that happen, even with the Department of Education. The Vet Tech program has had some mixed results, with job placement dropping below 50% in some years. If we expand on Vet Tech to focus more on emerging tech fields, what protections should VA put in place to make sure that veterans aren't encouraged to participate in programs that sound good but don't lead to jobs after they're over?
Thank you for the question, and that's a very interesting area to go to because it really speaks to the efficiency and effectiveness of the program, and we'd be happy to sit down with you, staff, and others to identify some protections for that. As of right now, I'm not sure that I have any great ideas.
Well, definitely want to sit down with both of you all this. Let's keep this on our radar. Let's make sure this is working. We can't just get caught in more bureaucracy. We've got to have programs that work for our veterans. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Mears, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman and Ranking Member Pappas, for holding this hearing, and to the witnesses that are here with us today. One of the many factors this committee has identified as critical to a veteran's successful transition that stand out for me are medical care, and the second is employment. So I want to start with discussing the importance of medical and mental health care post-service. As you know, some of you were service members yourself, wearing the uniform and serving our nation, oftentimes veterans deal in silence with the pain of PTSD, of depression, of substance abuse, and the risk of self-harm. So we know it's essential that we do everything we can to ensure that no veteran has to confront their challenges alone by providing them the information and the access necessary to medical and mental health services. I understand there are some pieces of legislation today that we're considering that make an attempt to help our veterans with that. So I have a couple questions. I know a core program that assists veterans transition to civilian life is a TAP program. Here, veterans take classes to learn all that is available to them. And we know that veterans often do not retain what they learn and can be overwhelmed by the volume of information all coming at the same time. But I understand that HR 2878 attempts to address the current mental health gaps veterans face by adding information to TAPs on mental health. So the question I have, Mr. Smith, given that DOD has expressed it would not provide more time for veterans to attend TAP classes, from your perspective, what content, if any, would realistically have to be removed to make room for some of the new mandates that are coming through HR 2878?
I'm not sure what should be or what could be removed from that program. I realize it's a very full agenda, and I know VA's benefits and services are one entire day.
Yeah. So let me ask you a follow-up question. Do you have any data that veterans retain or act on information delivered in already overstuffed format months before separation? And if so, what does the data show you?
I don't have any information about retention of information, which is why VA in 2019 launched the VA Solid Start program, where we've reached out to 115,000 veterans to date by telephone approximately every 90 days post-service to communicate with them.
Well, thank you, Mr. Smith. I know that my clock is ticking, so I'm going to just shift gears for a second, and I want to talk about employment. I have a question on the Where is to Workforce Act. We know that employment is critical for a successful transition post-service, and I am worried that some of the bills discussed today do not address the larger issues at hand, including some of the scarcity of apprenticeship programs, and that many programs aren't widely known to our veterans. So given that when the GI Bill apprenticeship and on-the-job training structure was created, the core assumption was the employer would pay a meaningful share of the veteran's income, and then VA would then supplement it with what would be necessary. The question that I have is, for Mr. Workman, is that assumption still holding today, that the employer would pay a meaningful share? Specifically, what data does DOL or VA have on how many approved apprenticeship or OJT programs are paying veterans wages that are sufficient to offset the declining GI Bill housing allowance?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. I don't have the data in front of me. I'm more than willing to go back and get that data and provide it to you.
It would be really helpful for me, because as we're looking at declining housing allowance, I want to make sure that our veterans are not put in a position where they're barely making it with whatever we're getting offset from the private market. And let me ask you just one last follow-up question. I do have 58 seconds. What happens when the apprenticeship or AGT or OJT programs are not paying sufficient wages? I know you're going to get me some data, but in your own perspective or your own experience, what do you think happens to them when they're not getting sufficient wages?
Thank you for the question. I don't want to speak to something that I don't know about. What I can tell you is the president has made it clear that he wants 1 million new apprenticeships. And
so, Mr. Workman, as you go back, I just want to really reiterate, these apprenticeships are incredibly important. We also don't want to add more financial stress to our service members, and we want to make sure that they're getting wages necessary to be able to participate in the program and be successful. So I do look forward to getting this information from you. Thank you. With that, I yield back.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And the witnesses are now excused, seeing no further questions. I hope you'll all stick around for the second panel. And on our second panel today, we'll hear from the following witnesses. Okay. Yeah, if you're on the second panel, please come forward and I'll introduce you as you arrive. We are doing a quick shift change. right, thank you. Going from my right, your left, we have Mr. Sam Cook, president of the Superior Van and Mobility Company, Mr. Larry Smith, a semiconductor industry expert, Ms. Julie Howell, associate legislative director for government relations, testifying on behalf of Paralyzed Veterans of America, Ms. Catherine Monet or Monette, how do I say it? Monet? All right. CEO of the National Coalition of Homeless Veterans. I would now like to welcome the witnesses to our second panel, and I ask you to please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you, and let the record reflect that all witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Mr. Cook, you're now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony.
Equipment Dealers Association, known as NMEDA. I would like to thank Chairman Barrett, Chairman Van Orden, whose family is in our prayers, Ranking Member Pappas, and all the members of the House Veterans Subcommittee on Economic Opportunity for the chance to testify today. My name is Sam Cook. I'm the president of Superior Van and Mobility, the nation's largest family-owned adapted vehicle dealer. Based in Louisville, Kentucky, my family owns and operates 18 dealer locations across the South and Midwest. For over 25 years, we have served disabled veterans through the Automotive Adaptive Equipment Program, which provides disabled veterans with accessible vehicles. NMEDA members across the country are driven by one noble principle: to provide mobility to disabled veterans who have given so much to our country. Further, I'd like to clarify that my testimony and support for changes to the AAE is in no way an indictment on the many hardworking frontline employees of the VA who serve our veterans every day. Our issue is with the system itself. The old joke is you've been to one VA location, then you've been to one VA location. Unfortunately, this is not my first time testifying before Congress about VA shortcomings. I testified in 2015, along with many others, about the VA policy relating to the quality of modifications made to vehicles to accommodate each veteran's disability. That effort resulted in the passage of the Veterans Mobility Safety Act, a bill signed into law in 2016 intended to ensure the modifications made for veterans were properly performed and appropriate for their disability. Sadly, and for unexplained reasons, the law still has not been implemented due to the VA not issuing the mandated interpretive regulations. Consistent with this theme, VA payment policy can vary dramatically from location to location. Despite the existence of the Prompt Payment Act, which requires federal agencies, including the VA, to pay their contractors usually within 30 days, at the end of 2025, my company alone had over $2.1 million in past due invoices. This makes it difficult for businesses to serve disabled veterans in our country, as they're essentially being asked to be a subprime lender to the VA. There are good, credible dealers who have or considering ceasing to do business with the VA altogether due to the payment issues. Without proper standards, this will likely cause veterans to travel hundreds of miles for service. In addition to the uncertainty as when you might get paid, another change the VA made that has drastically affected the amount the VA reimburses dealers for adaptive equipment. As a taxpayer, I want the government to get the best price possible. That being said, the price the government pays should be based on current market conditions and data. The VA's own regulations instructed it to establish a fee schedule on July 17, 2024, based on the most recent data to update it annually. Despite this requirement, the schedule was created using not the most available data. The published schedule was based on prices from 2021. We all know that costs are considerably higher now than they were in 2021. Further, at this time, the VA published its schedule. NMEDA's 2024 survey was available. And that will be updated every year moving forward. Absent congressional intervention, industry has no confidence the schedule will be brought in line with current pricing. The failure to follow very clear direct regulations regarding publishing a current payment schedule identified ongoing challenges with vendors in getting paid on time, and now a decade-long wait for professional standards for modification of vehicles suggests the VA feels it is unrestricted discretion in interpretation of application of the law, making it extremely difficult to serve our veterans. One piece of the solution is the Bipartisan Assist Act, sponsored by Congressman Barrett, which passed the House unanimously last year. I, as well as NMEDA, believe that the Cruise Act, recently introduced by Chairman Barrett, is another important part of the solution. I and NMEDA support Chairman Barrett's Cruise Act. The Cruise Act will centralize the process for reimbursing dealers in the Department's central office and require the VA to accurately track payments for dealers that are more than 90 days overdue. I hope the Cruise Act is passed and properly implemented. Many of these issues facing the mobility equipment dealers and disabled veterans will be resolved. I would like to thank the committee for listening today and thank each of you for serving our country.
Thank you, Mr. Cook, and the written statement of Mr. Cook will be entered into the record. Mr. Smith, welcome to Washington. You're now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony.
Thank you, Chairman Barrett and Ranking Member Pappas and distinguished subcommittee members for this opportunity. As a veteran committed to helping others enter the semiconductor industry, I believe these proposals will better connect veterans to rewarding careers. My name is Larry Smith. After a decade in the Army, including time on active duty and in the reserves, after graduating from West Point, I worked 35 years in the semiconductor industry, serving as president and chairman of the board of Tokyo Electron US for 14 years. Now retired, I have pivoted to purpose, focused on hiring and housing veterans, and serve as vice chair of the governor's executive committee for the Texas Semiconductor Innovation Consortium and chairman of the board of Mobile Loaves and Fishes. More than 10 years ago, I chose to recruit field engineers from 3 groups, including veterans. During this period, I was lucky enough to collaborate with my close friend, Paul Funk, who later became 4-star general and led TRADOC, or Training and Doctrine Command. Paul and I began our military careers as young lieutenants together at Fort Hood, and our friendship has lasted ever since. He helped me and my team connect with key leaders at the Transition Assistance Program and take part in job fairs. After years of recruiting veterans, I saw that our industry, spanning thousands of companies, could reach far more people than we had so far. I proposed recruiting veterans as a talent pipeline to SEMI's CEO and presented this idea as keynote speaker at 2 major trade shows attended by over 35,000 people this last year. My talks addressed why and how to recruit veterans into the semiconductor industry, highlighting their valuable attributes and technical skills. As mentioned already, the semiconductor industry released a report updated in December of 2025, detailing both ongoing and anticipated investments in the semiconductor manufacturing facilities. These initiatives are projected to create and support over 500,000 jobs, including 70,000 facility positions and 122,000 construction roles. This projected growth is anticipated to create significant demand for technicians, rendering these positions well-suited for transitioning service members who are seeking impactful careers that support national security. Currently, semiconductors are integral to geopolitical competition and underpin advancements in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, space exploration, and defense technologies. Collaborative job training programs and efforts to expand the pool of STEM educators can address the talent shortage, with veterans serving as an excellent resource to meet this demand. Let me share some details on a project in Killeen, Texas that can be a model to consider. The military talent pipeline near Fort Hood helps service members and their spouses transition to jobs in fields like semiconductor technology and design, STEM education, cybersecurity, data analytics, and law enforcement. It's funded by federal, state, industry, and local partners, with the Killeen Economic Development Corporation donating a 25,000 square foot facility. The project also received a $2.5 million federal grant for renovating that donated building. Additional support for projects include workforce development funds from the Texas CHIPS Act, upcoming appropriations pending Senate review, a $2 million fab tool donation from Tokyo Electron, and a $2 million allocation from the Texas legislature. Collaborative partners include Texas University System and local community colleges. Texas A&M Central Texas, led by Dr. Richard Rhodes, donated $2 million to Temple College to help establish a semiconductor lab near the Samsung site. Project leaders are creating the playbook and sharing it with other U.S. regions to include Arizona and New York. Additionally, I'm proud of our team's work at Tokyo Electron US. Our goal is to be a trusted global partner providing technology that enables life. We've invested billions of dollars in U.S. semiconductor manufacturing and research and development. We participate in the PAYS program and earned several military-friendly awards from the DOL and DOW. To include today, I saw posting on LinkedIn that we were recognized again with both a platinum and gold level recognition. As member of SemiWorks, this team has reached over 150,000 military members through outreach over the last 3 years, and a CHIP career site lists job opportunities to the 1,000 Semi members and supports military personnel with resources, tools, and career coaching. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of these initiatives before this subcommittee today. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, and go Army. The written statement of Mr. Smith will be entered into the hearing record. Ms. Howell, you're now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony.
Chairman Barrett, Ranking Member Pappas, and members of the Subcommittee, Paralyzed Veterans of America appreciates the opportunity to share our views on some of the legislation before the subcommittee today. PVA members are veterans who have incurred a spinal cord injury or disorder, and they experience the breadth of VA care and benefits in unique ways due to their injuries and their illnesses. Most of the legislation has been addressed in our written testimony, so I'll limit my comments to 3 bills that we believe would have a positive impact on our membership. Just like every American, access to safe and reliable transportation is essential to the mobility, health, and independence of catastrophically disabled veterans. Thus, addressing transportation concerns is a top priority for PVA, and we've been honored to work with this committee to pass several bills in recent years to improve access to adapted vehicles. The Automobile Adaptive Equipment, or AAE program, prescribes and pays for adaptive equipment which allows eligible veterans to safely operate and enter and exit their vehicles. Most adaptations are done by dealers outside of the VA, and the work is reimbursed by payment processors at the local VA medical center. Unfortunately, we often hear from PVA members, as well as industry professionals, that millions of dollars in unpaid reimbursements remain outstanding. H.R. 7083, the CRUISE Act, seeks to address this problem by changing the way VA reimburses businesses that make the necessary modifications to the vehicles that veterans need. The bill requires the VA to implement a process to track invoices and issue payments in a timely manner. If the latter takes more than 30 days, the department must notify the business of delays and provide them with an anticipated date of payment. While PVA supports the intent of this legislation, we are concerned that without careful oversight, an already difficult reimbursement process could become even more complicated. Disabled veterans have earned these benefits, and it is the obligation of the VA and Congress to ensure their delivery, which includes paying vendors that partner in achieving veteran independence. Next, I'd like to discuss H.R. 982, the Warriors to Workforce Act. While PVA supports the intent of increasing the monthly housing allowance rate for veterans using their post-9/11 GI Bill for apprenticeships, we do not think that the bill goes far enough in supporting veterans deciding on non-traditional education paths like apprenticeships or other on-the-job training programs. If Congress increases the second 6 months of an apprenticeship program from 80% to 90%, that would mean that for veterans in a 2-year apprenticeship, the first 6 months of the second year of their program would see a drop from 90% to 60% of a veteran's MAH payment. That would most likely result in increased numbers of veterans choosing to discontinue this apprenticeship. With the increasing need for skilled trades and other non-degree holding professionals, and significant barriers to employment that still exist for veterans with serious disabilities, we should ensure that any veteran who decides to enter the trades is fully supported by their earned education benefits. Lastly, I'd like to briefly mention H.R. 2878, the Daniel J. Harvey Jr. and Adam Lambert Improving Service Member Transition to Reduce Veteran Suicide Act. Ensuring transitioning service members and veterans are aware of services and supports offered by the VA is critical in the health and well-being of our nation's veterans, and we should do everything we can to improve awareness of these life-saving supports and services. I want to remind the subcommittee that not all transitioning service members get the traditional TAP experience. Those who separate due to illness or injury may not get to attend a TAP class due to medical appointments and other requirements. The Department of Defense and the VA should do everything possible to ensure that all service members and veterans know about the mental health support and suicide prevention programs made available to them. Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to take the last few minutes of my testimony to share a profound loss experience at Paralyzed Veterans of America. Last week, Len Selfin unexpectedly passed away. Len was PVA's general counsel, and he worked for more than 30 years in veterans law. Not only did Len work for PVA, the United Spinal Association, and the Vietnam Veterans of America, but he also served as a consultant to the Veterans Consortium Pro Bono program and was a senior appellate attorney in the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs Office of General Counsel. Len's professionalism, wisdom, and experience with nuances in veteran case law will be missed by more than just PVA members. Thank you again for the opportunity to share our views on some of the bills being considered today, and I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, and thank you for that tribute and our condolences to the entire organization on that loss and the loss of our veteran community as well, so thank you. And your testimony will be entered into the record as well, and Ms. Monet, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Barrett, Ranking Member Pappas, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to offer views on legislation before you. While there are several great bills today, we are providing statements on behalf of legislation that would directly affect efforts to prevent and/or end homelessness among veterans and their families. NCHV supports H.R. 7149, the Veteran Housing Promise Act, which amends Title 38 to eliminate maximum authorizations of appropriations and make permanent the authority for several programs supporting homeless veterans. For decades, VA's...
Can you move your microphone a little closer? I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, is this better?
I think so. Thank you.
Great. For decades, VA's homelessness programs have been instrumental in reducing veteran homelessness. These efforts provide essential services such as outreach, housing assistance, employment reintegration, and supportive services for vulnerable populations, including women veterans and those with children. Yet the current patchwork of time-limited authorizations and funding caps poses significant challenges for program continuity, planning, and the ability of community providers to sustain the life-changing services veterans rely on. By removing funding caps and time-limited authorizations, this legislation provides long-term stability and predictability for these proven programs. Such stability allows both VA and community-based partners to better coordinate care, invest in workforce development, and ensure that no veteran who has served our nation has to face homelessness or housing insecurity due to administrative challenges. Key provisions of this bill, such as the permanent authority for the domiciliary care and supportive services for very low-income veteran families program, and long-term authorization for grants benefiting homeless veterans with special needs, will strengthen the federal response and allow for continued progress toward the shared goal of ending veteran homelessness. NCHV supports H.R. 7049, the Improving Mental Health Care and Coordination for Homeless Veterans Act. It seeks to address deficiencies in the referral process to homeless programs for veterans with positive screenings for housing instability and other clinical settings. VHA's homeless clinical screening tool is an important way that clinicians are able to identify veterans facing housing challenges, especially those who may not know help is available or those who may not want to disclose their housing status due to stigma or other issues. However, last month, the VA OIG found that in many instances, unclear referral procedures and staff inconsistency in following them resulted in veterans screening positive but never receiving the housing referrals they requested or not receiving them within the prescripted 30-day timeline. It is unacceptable that bureaucratic processes or the lack thereof prevented veterans from accessing housing support, and NCHV thanks Rep. Valadeo and the bill's co-sponsors for moving quickly to address this issue. The focus on timely assessment and intake planning will help VA house more veterans. Further, we appreciate the bill's focus on ensuring VA identifies appropriate permanent housing options for veterans quickly, in addition to addressing long-term health and mental health needs. As the committee considers this provision, we encourage frank discussions with VA to ensure that VA medical centers are being allowed to hire sufficient staff and backfill vacancies to support these processes. Further, as team-based case management becomes more common, we encourage discussions around ensuring that the homeless program staff has appropriate skill sets to identify housing placements and support housing navigation, rather than the usual clinical skills VA tends to prioritize. In conclusion, we commend the committee's leadership for advancing policies that recognize homelessness among veterans as not just a matter of housing, but of dignity, stability, and national responsibility. We stand ready to support implementation and continued oversight of all of these essential programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Monet. And the written statement of Ms. Monet will be entered into the hearing record, and we'll now proceed to questioning. I'm going to recognize myself first for 5 minutes. Starting with Mr. Cook, thank you again for being here today. Really appreciate your testimony. Can you walk our committee through the process for a veteran receiving a vehicle for the first time, how that approval works, where you enter the process, and then where the payment ultimately gets remitted so that we can kind of get an understanding of that?
Sure, there are two programs. The 4502 program that was mentioned in the VA's testimony is an auto grant that you can get, that they get, and it's basically a check. So the grant is signed by the VA, and you can take it to an automobile dealer. You can take it to somebody like us. If you don't need a full conversion and you just want to be able to get a vehicle that needs hand controls, you want to buy, a Ford Expedition, you can go to the Ford dealer, buy that, and this grant is the $27,000 figure that he referred to. And then that is paid to either the dealer, or the check comes directly to them from the VA. That grant is mailed directly to the regional office, so you don't have a lot of hands touching it. So when he said 75 days of that one, yeah, because it just goes from here to here. Where the 1394 program goes through the prosthetics department. So the veteran goes into the prosthetics department at the VA, and they're prescribed a wheelchair, and then they were determined that they need a van to be able to transport back and forth, or to drive. So there's a prescription written, it comes to the dealer, and the dealer basically fills the prescription from there on what the requirements are that person needs, what the veteran is. Every veteran is different. Some drive, some don't drive, some need specialty steering, and whatever those things are. And then once the work is complete, the vehicle goes to the VA for inspection, either virtually or in person. The VA checks and says, yes, all of these are on there, and we submit the paperwork to the prosthetics department. Prosthetics department then signs off, sends everything to regional office at the VBA. That's where those two departments don't talk back and forth. We can't call one and say we call prosthetics and they say, yes, everything's submitted. And then you try to figure out, well, is it the regional office that's delaying it? And the regional office might say, hey, we're missing this, but you don't get notification to say you're missing this. You have to follow up and continue to do so. Today, I got an email while I was here. We got paid on a claim from 2023. We also got paid on one from 2024 today. So this is not a 75-day issue. It's much greater than that.
Well, hopefully when you're here testifying in 10 more years, it won't be on claims from today. So we appreciate your repeat performance in committee, but we're hoping to fix some of these problems nonetheless. And so if a veteran gets a prescription for a mobility van, perhaps their spouse is going to be driving it, but they will be riding as a passenger and need a ramp or some other, accommodation, or maybe they're going to be driving it and need other further accommodations. The veteran would not be, it's not designed for them to be paying out of pocket for that mobility vehicle. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So that $20-some thousand stipend is for modifications to a traditional vehicle, whereas the prosthetic assessment is for, you need a specifically designed vehicle for this purpose. But I think, as you shared with me before, some of the cost reimbursements are based on data from now going on 5 years ago, and certainly, hasn't kept up with cost of living since then, and so we're now becoming to grow out of sync with what the actual cost of some of these products and devices are. Is that also true? That's accurate. And so right now, the veteran either pays out of pocket the difference, or the dealership eats the cost of that. So you have to make that decision as a business owner. To me, the reason why the veteran needs this vehicle is for an injury sustained during their service to this country. So, that's a promise that the country made to the veteran, and it should be fulfilled. Great. Well, thank you. We appreciate that. We want to make sure that you're reimbursed and made whole for, work that you do and for a fair price. Do you believe that H.R. 7083, the Cruise Act that you spoke about, would help adaptive automotive equipment dealers like yourself provide better service for veterans and receive timely payment that you rely on? Sure, definitely would have a central source that we could go in a clearinghouse, if you will, to be able to know what's going on, because right now there's so many things that can be interpreted different ways, and there's so many hands that touch it. Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Now I yield to Ranking Member Pappas for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you very much. Ms. Howell, thanks for being with us. I want to start with you, and thanks for relating the experience and the dedication that your colleague showed to the veteran community in his service. We express our condolences to you and your organization on his passing. I wanted to ask you a question about H.R. 5436. VA couldn't answer this one, but maybe you can. This is about schools withholding student veteran transcripts. I'm wondering if you think that student veterans should receive the same protections against schools withholding transcripts as their peers who receive Title IV Department of Education funds.
Thank you for the question, sir, and thank you for the condolences, everybody. PVA fully supports HR 5436. We believe that passing this bill will provide parity for a post 9/11 or any student veteran using VA education benefits. It will provide them parity with any Title IV student. We often see that transcript withholding is used as a means of debt collection, and rarely is it successful. So we think passing this bill will just provide parity to other students, particularly in the event if a student veteran is in some kind of appeal or dispute with VA who has outstanding payments to the school, the veteran shouldn't be on the hook for that.
Thanks for being clear on that response. I'm wondering, you also touched on this in your testimony, but just to pull this out again, you talked about this cliff that potentially is going to be created here if Congress raises the MHA payment rate to veterans using GI Bill to attend apprenticeship to 90% for months 7 through 12. That this creates a drop-off in month 13. And I'm wondering if you can just talk about why that's the case and how this would potentially impact veterans.
Yes, sir, absolutely, and thank you again. In the one-pager for the bill circulated last Congress, data in the one-pager showed that from step, we'll say tier 2 to 3, on-the-job training or OJT program saw a 56% dropout rate, and apprenticeship saw a 44% dropout rate. That's without an increased 10% loss on their earnings that they take home for MAH or MHA. As we expressed in our written testimony and in our oral, we think that there's an opportunity here to go even farther, understanding the market demands, and in light of the hearing we had a couple weeks ago about underused apprenticeship and success after service, we think that we can thread the needle on this and increase the MAH rate for all veterans using on-the-job training or apprenticeship programs, because there is a demand in the market. There is a high need for these very skilled workers, and PVA doesn't think that that 30% drop in the payment is going to be any kind of solution. We're almost guaranteed to see more people drop. And increased oversight of the apprenticeship program might be helpful. We have heard anecdotally, at least, that there's an employer obligation to supplement that drop. That's why it tiers off the way it does. So if employers are not contributing their fair share, then that's something that needs to be examined.
Thank you very much. Ms. Monet, HR 7049 regarding mental health care and coordination for homeless veterans. From your testimony, in VA's testimony, and hearing from current grant recipients, it sounds like VA employees working within the homelessness program office are already required to do what's outlined in the bill. So should the focus of the legislation be requiring other parts of VA or community partners that come into contact with a homeless veteran to conduct the reporting and ensure that a warm handoff for that veteran is needed, who is needing resources?
So I think anything that we can do to connect veterans to resources quickly is a very good thing. What I will say is that intake processes do vary by community. Some of them have one single door of entry. Some of them have, no wrong door options. But I do think, from what I understand, the bill was designed to address really this low-hanging fruit, right, of veterans coming into VA and screening positive for homelessness or housing instability, but never getting connected to any services. And to me, I think that is probably the right starting point, and then we expand out to other providers and resources from there.
Well, thank you. Mr. Cook, thanks very much for your testimony as well. I come from a small business background, and if my business was owed $2.1 million from our customers, we wouldn't have been opened as long as we have been. So I thank you for your perseverance. I know that it's focused on how you can meet the needs of veterans, but frankly, you shouldn't have to put up with this. And what we don't want to see is for businesses that are providing important services for disabled veterans to just walk away because of their frustration with VA's processes. So you talked about this being an issue with the system itself, and I hope that there is room here for a modern IT system where you can quickly fill out forms, have those updated, track the process and progress of claims approvals and payments. Is that something that you think would help provide some clarity to your business?
It would. But in the Cruise Act, it leaves it's open enough where we can work within the current system, because, an IT upgrade is going to take years. And right now with the Cruise Act, if we'll get that passed and implemented, that at least will give us a faster way to our end goal.
Well, I appreciate that. We are really committed to working on this and finding a solution. So thanks very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
I yield back.
Thank you. The ranking member yields. Mr. McGarvey, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here today. Mr. Cook, I am going to start with you coming up here from Louisville, Kentucky. First of all, we appreciate what you do for our veterans, what you do in our community. And you'd mentioned while you're sitting there that today you found out that a claim has been paid you submitted in 2023.
Yes, sir.
We're going to let the record explicitly show it's 2026. And it's unbelievable to me. And quite frankly, it's completely unacceptable that that's happening. Because that doesn't just impact you. That goes to the heart of what we do here on this committee. That impacts our veterans. As Mr. Pappas said, when you run a small business and people aren't paying you for the services you provide, it's hard to stay open. And when the service you provide is getting our veterans where they need to go, that is a real problem. So not only is it 2026 and you're talking about payments from 2023, it's my understanding the VA is supposed to process and pay these claims within 30 days, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, 30 days. So again, 2023, 2026. I'm not the best at math, but it's my understanding that is more than 30 days. And so appreciate you being here and sharing these stories because we need to hear how this is actually happening out there for our veterans and for the people who provide those services. There's some VA locations that process claims even more slowly, and you hinted at this as well. There might be some issues with invoices. There might be dealers who aren't notified. Can you talk just a little bit more about what this system looks like? Maybe even give an example of how these problems hurt our veterans or could slow down their access to the mobility equipment they need.
Well, it's right now, as I said in my testimony, there are dealers that are having to make the decision, can I afford to do business with the VA? And a lot of our veterans come from rural areas. And again, if you don't have transportation, all of these other things that these folks are talking about today with employment, you can't get there if you don't have a vehicle. And again, if something happens to one of our vehicles today, we can hop in an Uber, we can borrow a family member's car. Well, if you're a disabled veteran and you have a vehicle customized for you, when it's down, you're down. And so we have, the impact is also, of a startup. If you're a startup, you're trying to get into this industry, and you're like, hey, this is great. We can, sell to the VA and serve veterans, but you've got a brand new business and you're not getting paid, you're not going to be in business very long. So, it affects the business side of it, but the whole key is the veteran. And if the veteran doesn't have a choice where to go, and a veteran doesn't have a close dealer to get their vehicle worked on, then they're at home.
Yeah, and it's so important. And you bring up a point that I think you brought up to me in the airport just a few days ago as both of us were flying up here. When veterans are getting in these vehicles, and they're getting in these vehicles because of their disability or their wheelchair, this is not something that just happened randomly. This is connected to their service. This is connected to what they did for us, and I appreciate you being here. Ms. Howell, I just want to go to you really quickly. Your written testimony makes it clear that PVA supports ending transcript withholding. Can you tell me how this policy affects veterans with disabilities who already face barriers to getting hired?
Thank you for the question, sir. Well, this is not my area of expertise as far as the transcripts to justify employment. We have heard stories of, not from our membership per se, but we've heard stories of veterans who are in a long hiring pipeline and they thought they did the work and there's a small outstanding debt, and next thing you know, the job is gone because they can't get the transcript. Now, I don't want to give a pass to people who have legitimate costs that they have incurred at a campus. I used to work for a university. There is an obligation for veterans to be on the ball for some of this stuff, but ultimately, using transcript withholding as a means of debt collection is not an effective practice, and who knows, maybe the veteran gets a job and then has the money to pay an outstanding debt.
It seems like it might be a logical next step. Your testimony also raised concerns about how many veterans drop out of apprenticeship programs, about 44%. What changes should these programs make to be more accessible and sustainable for long-term for veterans with significant disabilities?
I feel like that's enough content to probably be its own hearing, sir. I do think that continuing to make better connections between VA, DOL vets, the industry professionals, I think if we lean in on the programs that exist, we have an opportunity to sort of be better all around. That's not to say that necessarily transition or ScaleBridge or any of the existing pipelines that serve a very small number of veterans, like they do great work, but in making sure that the apprenticeships that veterans are connected to are with honorable and legitimate employers who are going to hold up their end of the bargain, I think that's critical.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Out of a sense of urgency, the floor just opened for votes, but I want to recognize Ms. Ramirez. I imagine you probably have a couple of questions.
Just a couple.
Sure.
Try to
Go
get
ahead.
through them so we can make it to votes as quickly as possible. Thank you again to the witnesses for being here. As a former nonprofit executive director that served unhoused neighbors, included many veterans, I understand that oftentimes the gap between our ability to fulfill our mission and the realities on the ground really come back to resources. For many housing and homeless service providers, timely federal grants are an essential part of the resources layered together to meet the needs of our neighbors. So I'm clear that to ensure every veteran has full access to the full spectrum of benefits that they've earned and deserved, we have to ensure that programs and services that the VA offers are consistently fully funded. Just over the past few years, there's been consistent investments on veteran homelessness, and as a result of that, national point-in-time count data shows that not only have we made progress in reducing veteran homelessness, but veterans are actually the only population who has seen a decline in rates of homelessness according to the point-in-time count. From the provider perspective, one of the biggest drivers of instability isn't funding cuts. It's Congress allowing authorizations and statutory caps to lapse or fall out of sync with appropriations. So, Ms. Monet, can you describe the real-world impact of this instability on providers and veterans? Can you explain why permanent authorization matters?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are a lot of factors when you think about community planning and how systems work together and knowing what you've got in your community and being able to project out how programs will work together to meet the needs of veterans. But from a provider perspective, I mean, I think you've been a nonprofit executive, so we all manage the budget. It's not very different than, being a small business, right? And when you lose out on that funding, you are thinking about making staffing changes, how you're gonna reduce services to pay the people you've got and pay the bills. You're delaying enrollments to make sure that you can manage with what you've got. And you're delaying subsidy payments to veterans. So what that looks like in practice for veterans, right, is longer delays to accessing their case management with their local case manager. It might look like starting over with a new case manager and a new treatment plan from what you had before. It could look like a longer time outside if your local shelter is not able to admit new veterans. If you're on SSVF, that might mean that they're not able to pay for your rent anymore. And in a normal environment, we might look to HUD-funded programs to help, but right now the HUD COC program is in a little bit of a precarious position. Yeah. And so there is not a lot of safety net out there to catch these veterans right now. And if you're in a community where they're criminalizing or looking at fining, ticketing in jails as their predominant solution to homelessness, it gets even worse.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Monet. So instability, that's
Absolutely.
really what it boils down to. And it means that many of our veterans are either at risk of homelessness or unable to move into permanent affordable housing. So I want to pivot really quickly in the last 2 minutes I have here to talk about the truth of the so-called Affordable Housing Guarantee Act. And let me be clear, as a former housing provider, as someone that's worked on housing for many years, I'm supportive of making every investment we need to prioritize ending veteran homelessness. Unfortunately, I know that it's not the orientation of every member of the committee because I've listened to colleagues previously discuss drastic cuts to funding for programs that are dedicated to our most vulnerable veterans. It seems like sometimes Republicans champion socialism when it benefits the rich and powerful who they think deserve it most. However, keeping disabled veterans stably housed has to be the priority of this committee, especially for those on fixed incomes who are one mortgage payment away from a crisis or from losing their home. Yet as written, the Affordable Housing Guarantee Act proposes doubling the VA loan guarantee on the theory that lenders will lower rates because the risk is reduced. So this question is for you, Ms. Howell. What confidence does your organization have that those savings will actually reach disabled veterans? And the follow-up to that is, what protections would you need to ensure that this policy strengthens housing stability rather than just simply increasing lender profits?
Thank you for that question, ma'am. I'm going to start by saying I am in no way a mortgage expert. PVA is not necessary. We have concerns with this legislation because we don't understand how just increasing the amount of the guarantee is guaranteed to reduce any kind of rates. I think, rightly or wrongly, and I'm not trying to throw any accusations here, but industry is going to look out for industry.
That's right.
Regardless of what it is. And so because of that, we don't necessarily agree with just raising the guarantee amount for the sake of raising it in the hopes that industry might be benevolent in that regard.
Any protections that you think need to be on it in the last 7 seconds we have?
Honestly, when it comes to the home loan, I'm not entirely sure I'm prepared to say anything around that, particularly as we wait to see the partial claim program rolled out and see if that was effective.
Well, thank you, Ms. Howell. My time is up, but I appreciate you. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Ramirez. Yields, and with that, thank you to the panelists for being here. I know, Mr. Smith, I'm not sure if you got a question on the panel, but I appreciate you being here nonetheless in your testimony. In the interest of expediting our departure to go vote, I will yield to the ranking member for any closing remarks you have. Thank you. And thank you all again for participating in today's hearing. I have received a number of statements for the record, which will be submitted into the record as long as they meet submission requirements. I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend the remarks and include extraneous material without objection. Show order. This hearing is adjourned.